Welcome to the Zweig Letter Podcast. I'm Randy Wilburn. Today's episode comes from a special series we recorded at Zweig Group's ElevateAEC conference in San Antonio, Texas. For those who aren't familiar with ElevateAEC, it's Zweig Group's annual gathering of AEC industry leaders. 3 days of keynotes, breakout sessions, awards, and candid conversations about the future of architecture, engineering, and construction. The content we captured was exceptional, and we wanted to share it with a wider audience. So whether you're listening to a keynote address or a breakout session, you're getting insights from the people shaping the industry. And if you want to learn more about attending a future ElevateAEC conference, visit zweiggroup.com. Now, let's dive in.
Welcome to the Zweig Letter Podcast, putting architectural, engineering, planning, and environmental consulting advice and guidance in your ear. Zweig Group's team of experts have spent more than 3 decades elevating the industry by helping AEP and environmental consulting firms thrive. And these podcasts deliver invaluable management, industry, client, marketing, and HR advice directly to you, free of charge. The Zweig Letter Podcasts, elevating the design industry one episode at a time.
Now we're going to explore innovation by looking at the curious intersection of AI, culture, and strategy in some of the industry's most impressive firms. The accomplished leaders you're about to hear from represent firms driving real innovation and getting real results. Our moderator for this panel comes from an organization that certainly understands innovation through the most important lens, investment. Frank Lazaro is the advisory practice lead for KP Ready Company, which is the new brand for Shadow Partners. Frank is a recognized leader in artificial intelligence innovation and technology consulting, known for delivering actionable strategies that drive growth and operational efficiencies. He's also a best-selling author, keynote speaker, and trusted advisor. He's a premier voice on the practical application of AI in business. So I'm going to hand it over to Frank, who will facilitate the conversation with our esteemed panel.
Chad, appreciate it. This is an exciting panel. I think when we talk to clients and I talk to individual firms, innovation is one of those things that tends to pop up. And more recently, what you find is that AI has become more and more part of that conversation. So I'm really excited about, this panel here and the things that we're going to kind of talk about in the next hour or so. So really want to kind of take a step and, let each of you kind of introduce yourself, and then we can jump right into it. And we'll start with Scott.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name's Scott Cattran. I am freshly minted as the executive chairman of Wolpert. I stepped out of the CEO position about 9 months ago. Everything's going well. Prior to that, I was running Wolpert for the last 10 years. It's been a great ride, and look forward to sharing some insights with all of you this morning on our topics.
Vanessa?
Good morning. My name is Vanessa McMahan. I'm VP of Innovation at Pape Dawson, and my background is in data science, and like our previous speaker, I was from analyst to VP, so I've gone through a myriad of different career paths.
Well, good morning. I'm Jered Morris. I'm the EVP of Technology and Innovation with Olson, where I've served for just about 25 years in a very circuitous pathway of getting here. I've been in this role for just under 2 years, so still relatively new in that vein, but licensed engineer by training, done a lot of things, and here we are.
That's great. Well, I appreciate everyone being here, and I think this is going to be great. So, one of the things that I see a lot of is that a lot of firms struggle with kind of figuring out where to start. Innovation is scary in some ways, like there's risk and a variety of other things. And Jered, we're going to start with you. within your firm, how do you look at setting direction around innovation, maybe even particularly AI, since that is a hot topic of the last, say, 36 months or so, while everything continues to evolve so rapidly?
Yeah, that's, when I think about that, really it all comes back to culture. I think all of this change that's happening at a rapidly changing pace, I think of the Greek letter delta, right? Delta, represents change of, acceleration, et cetera. And that's what I think is happening in our industry right now, right? And so when we think about innovation strategy, I go straight to culture. I think that's the first thing, and a lot of that is related to, how we're empowering our workforce, our employees, to think innovatively. I think as we see the change in artificial intelligence tools and so forth, that individual autonomy to start building out things, and that citizen innovation, as we like to call it here, is a big part of what's enabling our ability to execute on strategy at this point. So a bit of a bottoms-up intersecting with top-down strategy, if you will.
Yeah. Vanessa, what's going on with you and how you see it within your organization?
Yeah, when we started this office, one of the first things we did is we went to leadership and wanted to understand what are the guardrails. Like, we know that there is a million different paths you can take with all of the different things that are going out there, but we wanted to have guardrails on, give us a path to where we wanted to lead us to and get us to our vision. And one of the key things that we focus on is, what are the technologies that we're bringing in? That's not change for the sake of change, but change, it's also going to make our lives easier for our employees. That's really been a key focus for us.
Yeah. Scott, what's been going on at Wolpert?
Well, as respect to innovation, again, I think I agree with what you said. I think it's culture. I think it starts with, creating that culture of innovation, of being able to explore, being able to speak your voice, being able to kind of say, I think there's a different way of doing these things. Mm-hmm. So really our innovation gets kind of driven bottom up rather than top down, because, they're working on it. If I come in and say, hey, we should be doing this, and I have no earthly business doing that because I'm not working on the projects, right? So I think, again, we continue to just try to create a culture of open communication. We specifically work on making sure that different sectors, different companies that we've acquired talk to one another. You bring that perspective from all the different groups, and innovation just kind of blossoms from there.
Yeah.
And then it's about capitalizing on it, right? You can't just give people a voice and say, be innovative, and what should you do? You need to have a forum that allows you to kind of say, we'd like to do this, we need a budget, we need resources, we need time, we need breaks on utilization, all these types of things that will allow innovation to prosper and flourish. And I think it's the role of leadership to make sure that there is that kind of budget and there is that type of time that you give people, so that they can actually accomplish what they said they were going to do.
Yeah, that's good. It's interesting, the culture conversation came up with during the keynote, and that seems to be a very prevalent thing, which kind of really spawned another question, or kind of follow on with that is that when you start thinking about your innovation ecosystem, where do these big ideas come from? Do you feel that the proper culture within your organization, or are you set up properly to kind of cultivate that ecosystem of innovation within your organizations? Vanessa?
Yeah, so we have it set up in a few different ways. So we do definitely get ideas from leadership, but we've also established an innovation award fund in our company. And so people from any part of their company can submit their ideas, and they come to us as just an idea. Some of them have already developed the idea, and we really look to that for an opportunity to see what is actually going to be hands-on helpful for people who are actually doing the work, because we can't be everywhere. So it's been really great to get the ideas from leadership that's going to drive, kind of support the administrative to kind of get the business in the door, invoicing, those kind of things, and then also get the ideas from throughout the company. So we've done that.
Jered, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so our culture is set up in that we have guiding principles, tenets. One of our tenets is to the greatest extent possible, maintain decision making as close to our clients and those problems as we possibly can, and that translates into our innovation ecosystem here as well. Those ideas, those problems, those things that we are identifying, whether it's with our clients or internal opportunities, are really identified at that level. But then having that space, that environment, those budgets, those ways to centralize some of those ideas so that we can be proactive in investing in those is a big deal. Perhaps taking a step even further beyond that, though, is how do you teach this way of thinking across a workforce? And that's an area that we're spending a lot of time and investment in building out. It's one thing to have ideas and thoughts, but it's another to build that innovation muscle across an organization. And that's a great opportunity, I think, for our industry, quite frankly, to lean into.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting point because, one of the things when you study innovation, when you look at how people become more innovative, one of the key things is play, right? Play at work. And we saw that Lego land picture. And I think that is definitely somewhere that's ripe for this industry to learn how to play and think in broader, more creative ways. And so it's definitely something we're looking at.
And I was even thinking, you asked the question, is your culture set up for that? I still think people struggle to define what their culture is, right? It's like, so how much is leadership articulated, at least what they believe are the values? Because to me, culture is a set of belief and values. So have you articulated what the values are within your company? Are you setting those expectations of what you would like to have your ideal employees embrace, right? So we have 6 core values that kind of make up our culture. Progressive is one of those. So we talk about that, and then talking only gets you so far. So we've put all of our values as kind of part of the goals of people in our company, so that you have progressive type goals. You have goals that you need to further yourself, further your development, reach out, think outside the box. So to me, a culture that embraces innovation, that encourages that, and also measures you on it, will then allow you to have that type of innovative culture.
It's interesting, though, at least the organizations that I speak to, the more successful ones also embrace that concept of show and tell, right? Encourage the organization to try new things, try new technologies, but then also share it across the organization, because sometimes good ideas just kind of stay within departments, particularly if you're a bigger organization, and don't filter necessarily out. So slightly pivoting a little bit, so that's good. So we talked about the culture and just the motivation to do these things. One of the biggest questions, and I think this is probably a question that a lot of folks in here have, is let's focus on ROI, right? If I invest this, what do I get, right? And go back to Chad, what Chad said earlier about we're so hyper-focused on bad overhead, right? And we don't know what the return is. So when you think about AI or innovation investments, what's your approach to looking at those kinds of things? Is it like we want to try to fail fast and be innovative, or are you taking a more strategic approach? Do you set an innovation budget? So thinking about that, and Jered, we'll start with you on the end. So when you think about Olson, how are you thinking about innovation investment, not only in people, but also in the technology and the platforms?
Yeah, interestingly, the word budget in our culture is actually kind of a 4-letter word, because it automatically sets a constraint towards something versus having that opportunity for exploration. And so it's kind of an interesting thing to tag into. We look at our innovation portfolio as we would someone's 401k. It is a portfolio. You have some that are a little bit higher risk, that have a propensity for potential failure. Others that are going to be, pretty easy to recognize an ROI on. Most of those tend to be kind of in your core productivity improvement, margin improvement type activities. What I love is seeing things coming from our organization that are very easy, what we call everyday innovations that are coming from our workforce, that are easy wins, that we can scale rapidly. We've had a few of them even in the last week, just in some different conversations that are fantastic. It's very uplifting to see, individuals doing these heroic things and having the opportunity to spotlight and highlight those at an organization level and then leverage those into scaling opportunities. When you can unlock that in an organization, there's a lot of fantastic things that can take shape in that. So that's a little bit of it. Certainly, there are guardrails and budgetary attributes to that, but when we look at how we actually measure ROI, things that are more revenue-centric, we go through a very robust lean canvas framework. I'm sure many of you have some context in that. It's a great tool to approach those types of strategies and then vet different opportunities against one another, certainly.
Yeah. Vanessa?
Yeah, I think the ROI question, it's one that everybody struggles with, the AI ROI, right? It's a huge topic of conversation across all the industries. And it's really easy to calculate it when it's, supporting automation of something. I used to do it in 5 hours, now I do it in 5 minutes. That's really easy. The part where it's challenging is, how do you do the soft return on investment on LLMs where you're getting ideation coming out of it? And it's one of those things, like, of course, that's really hard to measure, but so is your investment in things like Teams and Slack and things like that. But you wouldn't even think about not having Teams. So it's that part of it is so soft, and it's also where you're positioning yourself for where you're going to be in 5 years. If you're not looking into this AI stack, if you're not doing these things that are innovative, where are you going to be in 5 years? Those are the soft things you are hard to measure, but if you don't do it, then you're going to be left behind. So.
Yeah, I would say prior to the proliferation of AI, we just had, it was innovation, right? And we had like an innovation challenge, and we let anybody submit anything, and we had judges and we reviewed them, and then we put time, money, and budgets behind those to develop the concepts. So we're taking a similar approach to that, to AI, and like you said, showcasing, putting up a intranet and a website where everybody can kind of post their ideas, talk about what they're doing, so to get conversations started. And then as people apply to use new tools, of course, you start off with the whole stuff of security and, data protection, things like that. But then on the more, progressive side, it's, is this going to help you? Is this going to help your clients? Is this going to help profitability? Like, what is the ROI? Try to categorize it. And then even more is to kind of say, and could be this done by you, or could this be done by your team, or could this be done by your sector or your company? Right? And then you start to really gauge, like, what could the potential ROI be?
Yeah. So interesting, from at least from my perspective, when I'm having conversations or we're working on projects, when we focus on solving one small problem versus trying to replace a whole process, we see better success, right? Because I think in some instances, we've all experienced this hype cycle to where we thought AI was going to do all these great things, and it does small things good, right? And it hasn't caught up, which kind of leads into this next question, because we kind of think about the investment side, and this is probably something that comes up often, is you start thinking the difference between build versus buy, right? Do I build my own AI solution, or do I buy an AI solution, or is there some form of hybrid type of solution? Vanessa, how are you guys approaching that build versus buy thought process in terms of give people tools, or do we build our own tools?
Yeah, so for me, it's very clear, like, if you can buy it, if it's a tool that's out there, everybody already has it, it's so much easier to just buy it. If it's a tool that you can't buy, it's not even available because it's just really niche to your organization, of course that means build. And that kind of goes along with what you were saying about how AI is very helpful when you're looking at addressing small issues. And I think that that's a piece where people are still kind of learning, because I think there's this imagination that you can just put AI on top of your network drive, and then you can ask about anything in the network drive, and it's just, no, we can't do it that way. So I think that, going back to the build versus buy, you have to be realistic about what AI can and can't do for you, and you have to be thoughtful about, do we have the resources? Do we want to take on the tech debt of building this, or should we just buy it?
So. Yeah. Jered?
Yeah, I completely agree. And to build on that, I would say in instances where there is a opportunity for significant differentiation or to increase the size of a moat that we have around a business offering, that's going to be a more likely environment where we would move into more of a build space. Certainly that's not always the case. Maybe the twist on this is what's this look like 1, 2, 3 years out? I think with the further emergence of a lot of citizen development tools, rapid app creation, things of that sort, what does that start to look like with a workforce that has tools in their hands to customize their workflows, customize solutions in rapid time? We weren't even talking about that even a year ago, and here we are talking about that. What does that look like? And I think that's maybe the bigger question is, what does this start to look like in our strategies over the next several years as we start to build out some of these solutions? Some of our buy solutions where we've had great success, our best success is actually where it's been a bit of a hybrid, where there is expertise from external, but we've been partnering and customizing and build out of those things. That's been a fantastic model that's worked out well for us.
Scott, how's Wolpert been dealing with the buy versus build?
Definitely buy to start. I mean, it changes so fast, right? You heard KP say that, 3 months throwing stuff out. Why would I build something like that? That's not going to be, that'll be redundant in that short a time frame. So yeah, I mean, the funny thing that I'm kind of waiting to see is there's a lot of tools out there, but I think there's specific ones that, a lot of firms are aggregating to. And I was asking a couple of my engineers yesterday, I was like, so when do we start to see proposals looking the same? Right? They all use the same tool to generate the same design. It's like, well, I saw that on the other proposal.
Yeah.
Did you guys collude on this? It's like I'm waiting to see if there's going to be some kind of almost generification that occurs, where people's designs. But it really does. I think it's a good for anybody that's starting. I think you should all build your tools out there. Just start building them. That'd be a good idea.
Yeah.
Kidding. You got to start experimenting with what's already out there, and then obviously as you get to learn the tools a little bit, hopefully those tools have APIs that you can program and you can customize. And you can put your own proprietary stuff in there, so that does differentiate you and keeps you away from generification.
I mean, I think to Jered's point, this concept of no code, low code is something of the last 6 months that has really propagated out that allows you to develop those applications. And typically when I'm talking to my clients, I focus on the buy. And there's a variety of reasons. You start thinking, you build it, you own it. And I don't mean it from the owning this is mine. You own the security, you own the maintenance, you own everything about that. Do you have software developers on staff to maintain it? So you have to kind of take that into account. It's just not getting a custom solution. You actually own the whole app development going forward. So.
Yeah, we had that situation about a year ago. We did some beta testing with some app development tools in the marketplace that were, at that time, we thought, this is a great solution. This is something we can build on. Well, fast forward to now, we can do all those things in-house now. So even in the last really 8 months, that's completely flipped. Where we were purchasing something, now we're recognizing that we have 50, 70 employees that can build all those things right now.
Yeah,
and that's a big shift.
Yeah, the hybrid works well because you don't necessarily have to start from scratch. And everything you were just mentioning, we've built software products, we've built sensors and things like that. It's a completely different business model than architecture and engineering. And it's is your DNA set up for that? Are you going to create different business models, different ROI mechanisms to be able to evaluate for that? And do you want that as a distraction, right? It's almost stick to your knitting. What are you good at? Are you good at software development? I would say most of the firms in the room are not, that's because we're not software engineers. So if you've got a strategy where you've got some engineers and you can value add the existing product, that seems to me a more just reasonable type strategy to take.
And it's interesting. If you ever spend any time around KP, you'll hear a lot about the ecosystem part. I mean, if your firm is in a position to invest in startups, sometimes putting capital into someone else's development and taking advantage of that is important. So when you think about your ecosystem, it's not only internal ideas and internal applications, but you also have to tend to look externally. And And that is something that a lot of firms don't do. Some of the more progressive firms, some of the bigger firms are doing that, but I would encourage, if you are in a position and you do have the ability to invest in that, that is an opportunity to definitely roll down the path of. Wrapping up the investment side, because this was a question that popped up as soon as everyone started talking about AI. How is that going to impact people? So when we start thinking about your innovation investments, your AI investments, which I also kind of find funny because we talk about we have a labor shortage in our industry, but then we also talk about how we're cutting head count because we're introducing AI. What are your thoughts about that in terms of your continued investments in innovation, efficiency, productivity, AI in particular? How do you see that impacting investments in headcount or people going forward? Jered, we can start with you.
So it refers back. There's a really good Harvard Business Review article called "Strategy in an Era of Abundance." If some of you have probably read it, others that haven't, I'd highly encourage a read. It's a great read in recognizing several questions of what does the world look like when a lot of our knowledge, the way that we solve problems, that limited resource becomes abundant through leveraging AI. We have a lot of our clients now that are starting to leverage tools that are automating or doing conceptual design before we even are at the table now. And so really thinking about that, what does that mean to our industry, businesses, et cetera, and really tackling some of those things as we look forward here. And it comes back to a question of value, how we value, most of our businesses, especially on the public sector side, are valued by number of hours, utilization. This is becoming an age-old conversation, right? Value versus utilization. But it really is a big question. I think we all do need to ask ourselves is what is the value we're creating and how are you capturing that as we're moving into this space of maybe a little more rapid pace and technological disruption here in our industry.
Yeah. Vanessa?
Last night when we were having the networking session, a lot of people talked about what KP talked about yesterday, and we're like, it was scary, And I think that there's this idea that we could be doing more to think about what do we want our industry to look like, not just what do we want our company to look like, but maybe we need to be banding together and think about what we want our industry to look like. And if we want our industry to leverage AI for our benefit, but we still want to grow and build engineering expertise in our individuals, we need to be thinking about how the AI will be supportive of that person, but not be taking over the engineering expertise. So I think, yes, we need to think strategically about that inside our company, but I think it would be more interesting if we thought about it as our industry.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting perspective to look at. I think our industry, though, is being disrupted, right? And who is our industry now? Mm-hmm. Who represents those firms, right? That disruption's not coming from within AE. It's coming from in IT, right? So it's like they have a different perspective of what that's going to do. And, regardless, I think, of what we say, they're going to keep going at it. Unless, even KP was saying yesterday, it's like, I'm not going to try to sell to the AE firms. I'm going to partner up. The AI guys and the IT guys and the VC guys are going to get together, and then we'll go find an AE firm that we'll buy.
Yeah.
Right.
That's totally different.
Yeah.
That's game-changing different, and it is happening. And and we can't even say what's going to happen to headcount. Like AI is already doing things that traditional job skills are being replaced right now. Right? It's not like in the future. It's not 3 years. It's when we hear people say designs that used to take 2 weeks are now taking 2 hours or 2 minutes, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. It's different. Yeah. The job functions are just totally different right now, and this is Moneyball. This is adapt or die.
Yep.
If you don't recognize that, then that's because you're eventually going to be like, well, why are we employing 10 of these designers when we only need one person with the AI program?
Yeah. So this is an area I'd love to build on that just for a minute here. Many of us have been in the industry for many years, there's a lot of aspects of our business that are, I'll say it, commoditized across different groups. You submit a proposal to a DOT, sometimes there's 100 proposals. Are they all able to perform that work to some level? Yeah, probably. We're moving into a phase that I think is highly divergent in our industry. There are definitely going to be differences in organizations that embrace this change and those that do not. I personally think that's a very exciting time in business to actually have an opportunity to differentiate in ways that maybe we haven't had that opportunity in some time. A lot of blue sky, but it's scary to some. I think it's a question and a discussion that needs to be had in a lot of different boardrooms and different companies of what this starts to look like. Because it is, I think it's a divergent pathway that we haven't seen in a very long time.
Yeah. It's like, is this just another tool? Don't think so.
Yeah.
It's the speed. Its speed is like what we haven't seen. Like when we had cloud computing and we had whatever the past things that have been, that didn't have a dynamic change effect on the jobs of the people that we employ, right? It was just a different medium. This is directly replacing the services that our people do. So, yeah, and it has to be bifurcated into, it can't be just architecture and engineering, but what specific services in architecture and engineering will be taken over, already taken over, and to be taken over, right? And putting a plan together for that, that's, to me, this intersection of culture, strategy, and AI is trying to figure out that. And try to figure that out as, again, it's happening so fast, and we're only getting bits and pieces of this because we're not spending all of our time watching what's being developed.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I look at it very similar perspectives, that it's not necessarily a reduction in roles, maybe in some areas, but I think it's re-envisioning some of these roles on how you look at this. Your IT department's going to move away from password resets to playing more of a strategic role in not only your data security, but also application deployment development, maybe even software development, right? So you start thinking about how many AE firms out there today have a data scientist on staff or a software developer. Those are the things those are some of the newer roles that I see coming into the future. So kind of building off what Scott just said, because he mentioned something that was interesting, strategic planning. How does innovation in AI now play a role, or does it play a role when you're thinking about your strategic plan? Is it a big part of what you're looking at, or are you still looking at the more of the fundamentals of what strategic planning is? Vanessa, we can start with you.
So I'd say for us, we're definitely considering it part of the strategy, but it's not the first thing. We want to think of our strategy first, but when we are thinking about our AI strategy, we want to be positioning ourselves for when things have matured a bit, because we're in the place of AI where maybe we were at with the internet back in the 90s, right? But we're still trying to figure out what to do with it. Facebook hasn't come in yet. We're still working with MySpace, and so we don't really know. But what do we do now to prepare for when it does mature? And that's about data, right? AI is fueled by data. So if your data strategy, if your data is not structured, this is the time to be focusing on your data and getting it organized to feed AI.
Yeah. Jered, what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so when I think of AI, I don't think AI is a strategy. I think it is a tool, a way to solve problems. When we think about a strategy, who are we serving? Who are our clients? What are their problems? What are we trying to solve for them? And then leveraging, whether it's AI, innovation, other tools in our toolbox, right? Technical expertise, those things, to help solve problems. I think when we think technology or AI is the strategy, I don't know that really makes sense to me. I think it is a part of the strategy, but it is not the strategy. And so aligning where you're going, the types of problems we have, the types of clients and so forth with how you solve those problems through the use of this is maybe more of our pathway at this time.
Scott?
I agree with what he said.
That's awesome. Well, that's interesting. So, like, kind of thinking about that, then you start thinking solely around like the strategy, and I do agree with that. You know, one of the things that we think about internally at KP Ready is the big sky, the blue sky type of opportunities. And sometimes the best ideas don't necessarily come from internal. Sometimes it's coming to an event like this and seeing what others are doing. When you start thinking about, like, if I had a magic wand to kind of solve an innovation problem or solution, where does your organizations lean into finding those types of opportunities? How do you not only identify or find the opportunities, but also kind of, vet it, cultivate it, and then move it through the organization? Jered, we can start with you on that.
So we do have a pretty robust innovation framework that we've launched, which helps to speak to a lot of those things. Mm-hmm. The idea is the problem statements are coming from the edge, the organization at large, and bringing those forward so that we can identify those that may have that significant impact. I'll go back to something that was said previously about, is this an individual, team, sector, or organizational problem? And we definitely look at it in the same way. Those things that are organizational that could have a huge impact on our ability to solve problems with clients, that's likely going to elevate. And looking at an investment versus ROI metric, again, I'll go back to our lean canvas approach. I think that's a great model for a lot of organizations to look at in terms of how do you define, what is that potential ROI on that. And some of those investments may fail, and that's okay. And that's part of this is innovation. I'll just say this maybe goes astray with how some people see this, but innovation at its core is not a part of your operation. Your operation is to generate revenue and P&L and the day-to-day and execution. Innovation is a messy process. It's an exploration process. There's a lot of things going on there, and it goes very much against sometimes when you think about the operation and how you're executing on the day-to-day, and you have to be thoughtful about that too, and just your overall ecosystem of innovation and how you approach that.
Mm-hmm. And I'd say it's evolving, right? As people are doing like vibe coding, and as there's more people that are tinkering with what they can build really easily with these LLM tools, they can be building something by themselves at their desk in an afternoon that would be great to deploy across the company. And then there's the bigger problems that maybe we do need a larger team. So this is evolving as the tools evolve too.
Yeah. I think I agree with what you said, Jered, that innovation is messy and it requires a lot of trials and rework and stuff like that. I think it's important to kind of set some parameters so if it creeps into operations, right? Like you can't let innovation just continue on without seeing any progress. So it has to be measured, right? So I think you establish a framework, like you said, you establish a website, you give time, money, budget, time, stuff to do that. You set some milestones to see progress. Yeah. And if the progress doesn't get there, you got to shut it down at some point, right? That could be stifling innovation, but there has to be some kind of ROI because we only have certain levels of profitability, even though it seems to be going up, that we can fund all these different things. And then there's a certain level of competitiveness, Darwinism, in there, like survival of the fittest, right? So the best innovations float to the top. And that's kind of like what the VC strategy is, right? Fund 10, hopefully one works out. Yeah. So you apply a smaller scale version of that within your own company, and then just see which ones float to the top.
Yeah. Fail fast. Kind of building off what Vanessa mentioned around the vibe coding, it's interesting you mentioned that. I know that KP's running a vibe-a-thon, which is that building off that same concept of bring a bunch of organizations together, see what sticks to the wall, see what happens. But I think that opens up organizations' mind to we can do this. Right, and it's a challenge for some organizations because they think it's too complex, in a lot of ways. In the remaining time that we have, this has been a very good internal. What's happening internally? Let's kind of pivot this to external now. Let's start thinking about clients, thinking about projects, and thinking about our partners. When you think about innovation, how are you identifying, or are you identifying your partners? Like, I'm selecting the most innovative partner, or are you really just selecting them because you know they can do the work, right? And I think that's been the mentality for a while. But putting your forward-thinking hat on, do you think it's important to have partners, subcontractors, et cetera, that have that innovative mindset? Who wants to take this one first? It wasn't on the list, by the way. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I think it's always good if you have a fellow person that you can go back and forth with new, exciting ideas. I do also think, though, it depends on the client.
Yeah.
So we have, public sector clients and private sector clients, and the private sector clients, are hungry for faster, more innovative, cheaper work. And the public sector clients are a little bit more like, we need to make sure this is still okay and falls within our protocol and procedures. So I think it also depends on the project. So
do you find that some of you said the public sector clients, do you find that there's more reluctance when it comes to, say, AI, or not necessarily innovate, because innovation is kind of more of a catch-all.
Right.
I find that I hear from the industry and people that I speak to that it's our clients are reluctant that you're incorporating AI. Do you see some of that?
I think that there's just historic learned concerns, like they've learned that they need to be cautious around new technologies because they don't know how they're going to get burnt. So it's very understandable.
Right.
And they do want AI, they do want to increase their use of AI, but they also want to make sure their data is protected.
Right.
And I think that that's what they're concerned about, is how do we start using this and leveraging it and make sure our data is protected and that we're still complying with all of our regulations that we have to fall within. So,
Jered, thoughts on that?
I would agree with everything that's been said, and if anything, I'd say we have the full spectrum. We serve a lot of different clients in our business across, public, private, and institutional realms. And I'd say on one side of the spectrum, we have clients that expect that we are applying every bit of AI to our workflows that we possibly can. Like, it's no longer an ask, it's an expectation. And we have others that have made it clear you will not use any AI in any application, which means we're getting out a pencil and paper and sending things in the mail to answer to that requirement, right? So, but it's all over the board right now.
Yeah.
I think you're seeing more and more trending towards the middle that are more on the extreme end of not wanting the application of these tools.
Yeah.
But I do think generally speaking, I think your public sector clientele have definitely been a little slower to react, and they have different priorities comparatively.
Well, I laugh about that because there is a county in Georgia that still requires a printed, hand-delivered submittal, which...
Yeah, you've got all different types of clients, right? And it doesn't necessarily have to be public and private.
Right.
We're always saying you want to work with smart clients with money. Mm-hmm. And the smart clients with money want to see the best product regardless of how it's made, right? Yeah. As long as you assuage them of the concerns that they're not going to have, their data is protected, there's no security concerns here, that's not going to be shared, their designs or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I think if you have the conversations with them that says our approach uses AI and it has, these protections, if they still say no, there's nothing you can do. It's like, okay, well, they'll just charge you twice for it, but if you have that conversation, it should be, I think, well received.
Yeah. No, I agree, and it's interesting. I still believe that there's some misconceptions around AI. I think the media and the hype have kind of blown it out. Yes, it's not perfect, but if you're implementing it and integrating it the right way, and putting those safeguards in place, I think that you have a successful path forward when it comes to deployments. So, we're getting close to the Q. We're going to open up the Q&A here in a few minutes, but I want to kind of get your individual perspectives around what do you hope for in the next 12 to say 20, 36 months in terms of AI and innovation? What's on your radar? What are you thinking about from a future state? Because we hear a lot about AI agents and agentic AI. And from my perspective, I'm like, oh, that sounds really cool, but it also sounds like we're getting into another hype cycle that these things are going to be very magical. And in some instances, then we get it and it's not. But when you start being, because we're all innovation people, we're all futurists, so to speak. What do you hope for in the next, say, 12 to 36 months when we start hearing these things like AI agents and agentic AI? Mm-hmm. Whoever likes to go first.
Well, maybe tag on to the overall Elevate theme that Chad has here with this overall conference over the years, right? Is I'm hopeful that our industry, instead of being a laggard in terms of quick progress and change and transformation, is able to accelerate and able to speed up here. Because I think it's an imperative for our industry at large here. And so, if anything, it's looking at our various organizations and saying, what are those things, engineers, for those of us in the room that are in that space, tend to be very analytical. We like process, we like comfort, tried and true. And everything we're talking about here kind of is going in the face of that in many respects. Yep, you got to have some of those things, but you also have to have that environment to experiment and to allow for that space for a workforce to do a lot of things that may feel a little bit uncomfortable. This vibe coding, these ability for our workforce to have a lot of autonomy to build a lot of things. A couple of years ago, an IT department would have said, that is scary, you can't do that, we have to lock these things out. How do we unlock these things across our industry? I think that would be something I'd be hopeful for so that we can continue to evolve and solve problems for all of our clients and the industry at large.
Yeah. It seems like that's more of an industry culture shift versus a technology or a solution, which is interesting. And I want to follow on with that real quick, Jered, because a thought popped in my head is, how does that evolve your hiring then going forward, right? Are you looking for that more like a Swiss Army knife type of person? I'm not looking for someone that's a spoon that does one thing. Do you think that changes how firms would hire going forward, that I need someone that has a structural engineering degree, but has a minor in computer science? Does that evolve? Does that even come into the equation? Good question, though, right?
Yeah. Certainly have thoughts. Go ahead.
Vanessa, thoughts on that?
Yeah, it kind of it takes my mind back to the original things that we were saying about how the industry is ripe to introduce more play and more creativity, and what we can do to foster that with technology. So if vibe coding is not going anywhere, it's just going to become more prevalent. So having people play with it and build things and having that platform that's secure from external threats for them to be able to build things that's going to help them and then easily be rolled out to help the rest of the company. And when you're saying does that change who you're hiring? I think that, it might not be computer science minors you want. You might want art history minors or philosophy minors, people that are thinking in a totally different way. So
yeah, I mean that's a very fascinating way to kind of think about that. And I do know I had a son that just recently graduated with an engineering degree, and one of the first classes that they had to take was a programming class, which was interesting because a lot of the kids weren't accustomed to that and they weren't prepared for it. But you can kind of see how a lot of these engineering disciplines are now trying to at least incorporate more technology into their platforms. Scott, you have any thoughts on that, on future hiring?
Well, similar thing. I almost take it back to my family. Like, my son wants to be an engineer and business person. I'm like, that's great.
Yeah.
And I was like, but you should take some computer science courses, because I think that they're going to merge together a little bit more. And so I think it'll be a little bit different in terms of maybe not the hiring, but that the people that are coming into the companies have different skill sets.
Yeah.
Backgrounds.
No, I agree with what my other son, who's a business major, I encourage him to take up cybersecurity as a minor. Like, business major, you're gonna just kind of blend in, try to stick out a little bit.
I really like, Vanessa, what you were saying in terms of maybe having some completely different pathways. That's one of my concerns with engineering curriculums at this point, is there's this continuous degradation of the humanities and social sciences component of those curriculums. And quite frankly, I think in the age of AI, I think some of the greatest differentiation that individuals are going to have is the ability to have breadth, have that authentic human connection and helping understand people. That's a space that I think has a huge opportunity in our industry to elevate further from where it has been. And right. And I do wonder if we get too narrow-minded in saying we only are going to focus on this versus building out that breadth. I think it's a great conversation. I don't know if anybody has all the answers to this by any stretch, but I do think it's one that, again, industry-wide, we should be having these conversations to tackle that.
Yeah, I remember when I did a degree in English, and my dad basically said, "Well, what are you going to do with that?" And I was like, "I don't know," but it didn't have a lot of hard courses, so I decided to do that. But English has helped me in terms of communication, right? And if you think about how a lot of the AI design tools are right now, it's that prompt driven, right? Speak into it what you want to see, and then poof, it'll give you the design. So if you had those people with different mindsets, different perspectives, English majors, whatever that is, they might be able to articulate things in a different way than architects and engineers that are more left brain versus right brain. You're always going to need architects and engineers to do the more specifics, the calcs and things like that. But it's hard to find engineers and architects that are more designy, right? There's more, at least I've found that. So if you have people with those different skills feeding into the AI prompts, you might get different designs. And that's one of the things, honestly, I think that's going to be exciting in that 3 to 5 years is the designs, right? They're going to be cooler, more different, I think, than ever before because you don't just do one design or two designers, show it to a client. Now it's like, hey, here's 50. Which one do you like? And some of them are extravagant and wild. What does that look like when it starts to show up in our cityscapes and things like that? It could really change the dynamic, and it could bring a really much more focus and attention on the industry because we're building cooler things.
Yeah. One of the things that excites me, though, is the whole concept of computer vision, using computers and cameras to kind of help visualize the world in front of us. And I look at it not only from being able to create cool designs, to be able to visualize something and see it, but also think about job site safety, being able to use cameras, right? Some of us probably seen job site cameras and we see construction progress, but imagine being able to take that to the next level, to be able to kind of go in and use computer vision and AI to not only see progress in design, but also identify safety issues and a variety of other things. So we're getting close to the end here, so I want to kind of give us an opportunity to open it up for some questions. And I do appreciate all the answers. But Chad, do we have anyone that may have a question?
We do. We've got 2 mics on both sides, but we've got our first question already over here.
Great panel. Thank you so much for participating. Have you found that clients are willing to participate in some of the payment, or is this a strictly overhead issue to develop the AI applications?
So looking at mutual investment or co-investment from a client perspective.
I think if you have some kind of your big top clients and you can talk to them about, listen, we've been one of the things that we've found when we work with data centers is a lot of the times it's hard to propagate the changes throughout all the design sheets, and we used a certain AI technique to be able to do that a lot more quickly and efficiently. And if you can kind of say, we're going to do 20 more data centers with you, so let's work on this, I think they're more apt to be able to do that rather than a one-off. And generally, there's not even that much of a cost sharing, especially on the design side. It's going to be a cost saving to the AE firm, so there's really not much that you're going to even have to ask them to. I think the greater question is what we talked about before. Are they willing and open to letting you use AI to give them a different type of product? And if you can get past that gate check, then I don't think you really need that much co-invest.
I think that's manifesting quite a bit across our business right now, where there is a lot of those partnerships. I think an interesting question that started to evolve from that is when you're building out solutions, who owns ultimately the IP and that solution, such that that can be leveraged across a number of different problem sets that we have. I think that's, I'm sure other organizations are tackling some of the same things, but these co-development problems, whether it's asset management type strategies, otherwise, there are a lot of those things that are starting to emerge, and we're starting to see it happening at a rapidly changing pace where that's taking place. And I think part of the challenge we're going to have moving forward here is just resources and the ability to navigate some of those things.
Does that dynamic change if you were participating in a joint venture? So not necessarily investment from a client, but investment from a partner? Do you guys see it that way? Because I kind of hear that question, and it's like there's multiple ways that investment can come into that.
That's a good question.
Yeah. So that's another thing to probably to look into. Chad, do we have another question?
Yep, got another question right here.
All right, thank you. I'm curious, besides the sort of things that a lot of firms are doing, like AI support for marketing, proposal preparation, and meeting minute preparation, do you, in your firms, have some examples of use cases where you've built something or applied something that's been a success?
I want to take that.
Yes. No, so our current count is about 30 kind of tools that we use, and I'd say probably half of those to maybe 60-70% are what you were talking about, like support functions, things that expedite efficiencies in HR, finance, IT, things like that. But we certainly have some really great improvements on the design side, on the A, the E, and my company also does geospatial type stuff that have definitely returned really great returns on it. So yeah, we have examples on all.
Vanessa, Jered?
Yeah, I mean, there is a big focus from our group on data. And so we do have a lot of data that's across the organization. It's in different spots. And so we've built tools to help automate making that data input faster and using AI to scrape the data out of the documents, no matter what the format. And that's, part of the building out of our foundation of data. So.
Yeah, I'd say most of our current solutions have been more core in our business in terms of things that are automating different workflows, different processes, whether it's invoicing we do for some of our field operations, to a lot of use cases where we've built out agentic workflows or large language model overlays of SharePoint sites, for knowledge management. We have a lot of those things that have started to emerge across the organization. Where I think there's opportunity, and we have a few things I can't speak about here today, but a few things that we're evolving here that are more on the revenue creation side, using some of these tools, which I think is pretty exciting, but those are early use cases right now. I think our greatest success has been core at this point, where we've seen direct impact to our team functions, whether they're corporate or technical at this point.
Yeah, and then from my perspective, the clients that we work with, primarily on report writing, so think about inspection reports, field reports, things where it's kind of more of administrative but not necessarily marketing related. Mm-hmm. We've seen some really good success with clients working on that. And then really around this concept of firm librarian. So you have a lot of information, and being able to use AI to, when deployed properly, be able to kind of pull out technical information, find information across vast data sets, is some of the success we've seen outside of the sales and marketing area.
I'd say the closer organizations get to having a very large amount of their data moved into more of a structured environment that they can fully access, you eliminate hallucinations, you create a lot more value in that. And I think there's tension from what I hear across a lot of organizations in organizing data. That's a heavy lift for a lot of companies, to having fractured and unstructured data across many different areas. It's a tension that exists, and it's one, the more that data is structured and your data strategy is sound, it's a foundation for dadgum everything here when we're talking about AI. the more robust that is, the more of these use cases and the value that you're able to create on those. Not to sound like a plug for data strategy and so forth, but it kind of is.
Got another question right here.
Hi. I'm sensing that a lot of our undergraduate programs, we've just got kind of flat-footed and haven't changed quickly enough. And so architecture, engineering, it could be biology, you name it. And so, and then throw in AI, and we're getting more commoditized. It's going to create more time to be able to add value to clients. But you won't have the skills for it because you're flat-footed or you're in some stage of your career where you're now needing more skills. And so whether that's another degree in computer science or a degree in business to bundle with your architecture and engineering or something else. So my question is, what upskilling initiatives do you have to address the skills gap we're going to have in this business or have today, and it's going to only get worse? Thank you.
Well, I'd say a lot of our focus is on taking some of the administrative tasks from our senior engineers so they can be back into that mentorship place where they can be really supporting the younger engineers to help them understand the fundamentals for design, fundamentals of engineering. And once again, it goes back to like letting them go back to learn how to be creative and think outside of the box. And so it's really, that's why we're focusing on taking those administrative things off of the senior engineers, and that's really where we're moving forward with.
I think that's a great question. I think we could spend an hour and a half on another talk on that specific question, because there's so many things that you could dig into here, but I'll focus on just two quick things. Internal to organizations like ours, a lot of this is, your training and upskilling. Right now we have a robust program to train the initial understanding of AI. We've done co-pilot within our organization and teaching and training. That's a base level knowledge so that you can start building those skills to the next level, right? So having that robust inward training and development. But before that even is really the mindset. You have to have an employee that is willing and interested in the learning to begin with. And I think there's a lot of work to be done in that space versus having the training and so forth. That's a space we really need to dig into. The other piece of this is educational, for students coming through undergraduate programs. I have a son that's in an architecture program, third-year architecture student right now. A year ago, they weren't allowed to use any AI tools in any of their work, in their studios, anything. This year, they're not only allowing it, but they bought them the enterprise license so that they can use it in everything they're doing. And they're changing their way of teaching overnight here. And I think that's fascinating because higher education tends to be a little bit slower to react to some of these. But I'm witnessing that. And I think that's a very promising move. But learning those fundamental skills, I still think there's a lot of work to be done in terms of what is that actually going to look like in higher education moving forward here with the emergence of these technology tools. But like I said, we could spend hours on that. There's tons of things we could get into there.
Yeah. I also think, too, it goes back to the first part of how we started this, right? The culture of innovation, right? If you're building that culture within your organization, which includes training, which includes a variety of different things, I think that helps a lot with getting people focused on those upskilling.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right, we've got a question back here.
Thank you. We're a very niche firm. We're in the hydropower sector, and we've done some really great things with AI, with our marketing, proposals, data management, things like that. We have some really brilliant people who are working on developing AI tools to use in like fishery science and things like that. The thing is like, how do you get a framework and a structure put in place of implementing, giving these people the time that they need, because they're billable people, very highly billable people, to give them the time or the motivation, like that framework to give them the space to do these things and develop these tools that they need to develop without impacting bottom line from, being billable. How do you kind of balance that? And is there some sort of framework, or is that something we need to be looking and thinking about as an industry, as a framework for when you have these people who have that insight, have the motivation, they want to do it, to free them up to be able to do it without impacting also needing them on project work?
Yeah. So how do you guys create capacity for people that are billable to focus on this?
You just got to plan for it, right? You just got to, again, I think it's how you set goals, right? You can't give that person a 90% utilization goal and say, be innovative, right? You gotta balance that. And then prior to that, again, you gotta have a mechanism that allows those ideas to float up, and then you can prioritize it so that not everybody in the firm wants to be innovative. But to me, it's just about planning for it like you'd plan for any kind of IT upgrade or anything else that you need to do. It just needs to be part of your strategic plan.
It's kind of related to the question we had earlier about, have you been able to find people, clients or partners to partner with you to handle these costs? It's all the same question, right? How do we pay for this? We want to use our billable hours, and we know we need to do this, but how do we pay for it? And so, I mean, it's what your palette is for investment. And do you invest in some younger folks that can maybe do the vibe coding for them? Do you, you just have to be creative and think about how you're going to do it. And if you don't want their time to do it, you need to find somebody's time that they can work with to do it.
I think it's an exciting question, because I think everybody in this room could probably answer that a little bit differently. And it ties back to the unique and individual cultures all of our firms have that are represented here. And one organization may be strategic and focus specific hours and time and create a plan and a process around that, where others set the environment in place. If you want to learn these things, we're going to provide the environment and the space for that, but it's not a top-down decision. It's something that the individual has to choose. One thing we've recognized is the people that are leaning in, that are coming forward at the individual level, that want to upskill, that want to learn, they're accelerating their careers at a much faster pace than the person sitting next to them that hasn't started yet. And they're starting to, the folks that haven't started yet, they're watching that, and they're seeing what they're doing and the productivity that they have and how they're seeing more of their supervisors around. I mean, it's you can see it, right? So I go back to culture again. It's the culture you set is going to help drive the results that you want.
Right. We've got another question right over here.
Hi. So I do proposals at my firm, and a common question I'm seeing more on proposals, especially on the federal or state side, is are you going to use AI in the generation of the work that you win? And it's usually a yes or no question. And oftentimes that could feel like a trap, almost like you don't know if they're expecting you to say yes or no, especially when the word generative AI is being used. So I'm just curious how each of you would recommend that your firm answers that question.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, if you're going to, you just say yes. I mean, if you want to qualify it, I guess you could put an assumption in there. But yeah, I mean, I think it's, again, knowing your clients. Are they going to be receiving that well or receiving that poorly? And if it's receiving that poorly, then say no, but then don't use AI.
Yeah, I mean, with the question so broadly written like that, I mean, it's almost impossible to say no to that question in this time. So if it's that broad of a question, then they don't get that specific of an answer. So.
Ditto.
Yeah.
It does make you wonder why they're asking the question, and are they using it part of the decision-making process or not? I think they're trying to gauge on how many people are using it, which may make changes to their selection process in the future.
Right. A much better question would be, how are you going to be using AI in the development of this project? So
the short answer is yes. You answer yes if you use it.
Yeah. Okay, we probably have time for one more question. Anybody got a microphone over there too? Questions for the panel? Okay, well, please help me give a round of applause to our panel.
Thanks for tuning in to the Zweig Letter Podcast. We hope that you can be part of elevating the industry and that you can apply our advice and information to your daily professional life. For a free digital subscription to the Zweig Letter, please visit thezweigletter.com/subscribe to gain more wisdom and inspiration, in addition to information about leadership, finance, HR, and marketing your firm. Subscribe today.